Gian Randev, welcome to In The Naad.
Satnam, thank you for having me.
How are you, brother?
I'm doing great. I'm happy to be here with you.
It is so good to have you here. Like, my God, I've been waiting for this opportunity. So let's start off by telling the audience a little bit about who you are and how we know each other.
All right, fantastic. Well, my spiritual name is Gian Randev. A lot of people know me. My birth name was Ryan, and I took on a spiritual name, and we've known each other for a long time now through my teacher, Tej Khalsa, and her Nine Treasures yoga community. And my background was I was always an athlete. I went to school for marketing, and I was a Brazilian jiu-jitsu coach. And the beauty of that was I got offered a job by a big marketer to open up a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu academy in Newport Beach. And I was studying very deeply that and coaching. And in, I think, 2014, 15, I saw a video of Rickson Gracie, who's like the legend of Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, doing some breathing techniques and yoga on the beach. And luckily enough, my teaching assistant was a Kundalini yoga teacher. And I said, can you show me how to do this? He says it's very helpful for his practice. And so he showed me some breath of fire, took me to some yoga classes. And then I walked into my teacher Tej's class and everything took off from there. I fell even more in love with the Kundalini yoga than the Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. But they complement each other so well that people who go really deep in both practices see they're almost like siblings. You know, one is a martial art and the other one's a yogic science. So I always say study the arts and sciences.
That's actually clever. I do find that Kundalini pairs well with most things in life.
Yes, and that's the thing. You see a lot of people from having a fitness background and a sport background is they talk about performance enhancement. And some things are very specific. Like I'll see people, I have a performance coach, but you're CEO. You don't need to be training for a 40-yard dash and a super heavy bench press. Where with Kundalini Yoga, they called it humanology, is it really gets down to the depth of your breathing, your relationship with your voice or your sound current, your movement, your stillness. So you're really working on yourself as a human on the root and the base foundational level as a human. So it positively impacts everything you do. It's very universal in that way.
So it's interesting. Let me tell the audience a little bit about you. You are a rising star in the Kundalini community. You teach internationally, and now you've taken on Babaji, which is an incredibly beautiful studio here. But we both have the same teacher. And we met in her class, and we've done a ton of teacher trainings together. And it feels to me like at this moment in our community that you're really taking on a huge leadership role and bringing back a community that I don't want to say it was broken up, but it lost its cohesiveness. And now you're taking the teachings from probably the world's most renowned teacher, other than a Yogi Bhajan, a keeper of the tradition, a keeper of the records, and you're carrying her tradition forward, which is one of the most valuable things in our tradition that you can do. So thank you for that, and thank you for being the kind of student that you were, because it's led you to being the kind of teacher that you are, which in my opinion is superb.
Oh, thank you so much. And I think you pointed out something that's really great, and I noticed it in you as well. As I had a jiu-jitsu coach who told me a long time ago, he goes, you're always a student first. And I was always being called to teach things because I feel that's kind of a natural skill set and gift is the art of teaching. You know, where like jiu-jitsu and Kundalini both, sometimes you can have very good practitioners, but they don't really know how to convey or transfer the information. But I find I really connect with the people who focus on just being a great student. And even the word sadhana, that's a daily spiritual practice, is discipline. And sadhu is disciple. And you see it across different lineages, whether it's Christianity or with Jesus and the 12 disciples.
Right.
Is just having discipline as a student, you kind of naturally flow into a teacher as well.
So let me ask you something. What would you say are some of the fundamental differences because people hear the word Kundalini and it freaks them out. So what would you say are some of the fundamental differences of Kundalini versus the more traditional yogas that we hear of on a more daily basis?
Well, we hear the word Kundalini yoga in the West, and in India it was called Raj yoga, and that's royal yoga. It was kind of kept for the royal class or very devout students. It's very secretive. And then Yogi Bhajan was the first one to bring it to the West. And they said he was going to originally teach Hatha yoga because he was a master of Hatha yoga as well. But he saw some of the people out here and saw how mixed up they were and was like, he needs something that moves faster. And I'm a huge fan of the other forms of yoga. And typically, Kundalini yoga is very separate, where the many different forms of yoga that are great, like Ashtanga or Bikram yoga, are branches of the Hatha lineage. And those are fantastic because they really prepare the body and open the body up to control or hold the Kundalini energy when it opens up. Because if somebody has a really weak nervous system, it can be very, very intense. But with Kundalini yoga, the ultimate goal is, I like that it's named that because it focuses on opening up the Kundalini energy. But all yoga has the same goal of expanding the consciousness. And so with this practice, we really get a lot of different things. We say the 4 pillars of the practice is we have the Kundalini yoga, which is the physical yoga, what most people think of. We have pranayama, which is breath work. We have meditation. And then we also have mantra, which is the sound current. And the beauty of this lineage in particular is not just all 4 of those things are really powerful by themselves, but then when you put them together, the synergy is really what brings out the power. It's one of those things where the whole is greater than the sum of its parts.
Absolutely.
So I think it's one of those things people really have that experience. And to note what you were saying, where a lot of people freak out, is they hear, oh, Kundalini yoga is dangerous. Well, anything can be dangerous. You know, drinking too much water can kill you, but it doesn't necessarily make the water itself dangerous. And so I think there's 2 reasons behind that. One, sometimes people mix Kundalini yoga with drugs, and I've seen that. They're doing a lot of drugs with Kundalini yoga, and then they get mixed up, and they want to blame the yoga when it's like, no, there are a lot of other factors going in there as well. And then the second one, I think a lot of people, you know, danger is very sexy to people. And so they want to market it as dangerous to make it more esoteric sounding. And I think that's really unnecessary. If it's done right, everything can be done in a very healthy manner. And I don't think anybody has anything to fear. They just do the practice correctly and you'll be fine.
Yeah, right. And let me explain something. In terms of when we're talking about danger, people have these experiences that are called Kundalini awakenings or Kundalini risings, and the energy is literally rising through your body.
Yeah.
And if you don't know what that experience is, it can be a little frightening. But if you breathe through it and you let the experience happen, it's actually a beautiful experience.
Yeah, it's
like
a very
I keep
beautiful
chasing mine.
Amazing,
yes.
yes.
I keep chasing that experience.
And it's a good point. And something to note is it can be very terrifying at the beginning when people, it's new, and anything new can be scary. It's just human nature. But B, if the nervous system isn't prepared, that's when it can just be jarring. And that's why we're not a big fan of using drugs. In the yogic tradition, it's called Maya. And believe it or not, encouraging people not to take drugs is often the most provocative thing a teacher can do. If you want to get attacked, is tell people to lay off that. But when the nervous system is strong and healthy, that energy can flow through you in a way that makes you feel great, and it's more subtle.
I agree. And also in this drug thing, it's not like we're a big drug community, but people who are going through tumultuous periods in their time, people who are trying to get off drugs, people who are just in transition often find spiritual practices. So we are not alone in that. I mean, this is very common. I mean, that's where the growth comes in, right? You know, light comes in at the wound. And so in most spiritual communities, you will find people who have been through something traumatic. That's not unusual. That's the same as the as the psychedelic community. I mean, we're all looking for growth. And I think what's particularly fascinating about Kundalini, it's you're also growing. Your practice is one of growth. It's physical growth, it's mental growth, it's spiritual growth, it's expansion. And that's to me what makes it fundamentally different than other yoga practices, which I too am a big fan of.
Yeah, I love other forms of yoga. I mean, I've practiced a lot of Ashtanga, a lot of Bikram. I'm a huge fan of it. And something to your point is we welcome people who come in with wounds and injuries. It's all inclusive. Everybody's welcome, whether you're at the top, you're looking for excellence, or you're looking for healing. And the yoga was created to give people an ability to have a superhuman experience and to be superhuman. It wasn't necessarily designed for healing, but it's just really powerful and really good at that. And so another thing I say is a lot of things people will hear me or other teachers say, for example, when we talk about drugs or we talk about a vegetarian diet being more effective for Kundalini yoga because meat slows down the Kundalini energy, is we always encourage people, come as you are and just be you. If the whole practice could be summed up into 2 words, it's just to be you. So I always encourage people who are vegetarians or who are drug-free is don't be self-righteous and don't be sanctimonious. Just shame and guilt are not good sales points. So you always want to encourage people to come in and as they are and just be themselves. And what's meant for you will continue, and what's meant to fall off will happen naturally.
I just think Kundalini is the fast track to rebooting the nervous system.
Yeah, it's amazing. And especially with the pranayama, or Yogi Bhajan founded Yogi Tea, and the original Yogi Tea recipes online. And that was what it was designed for, is to cleanse the liver, but also help with the nervous system. So even having that one teaching of having Yogi Tea every morning can really help people process, because being sensitive is a superpower. It's just being more aware. But oftentimes people mistake being sensitive with being reactive. And when you have a strong nervous system, you can handle more. And from that point of view, you can be calm, collected, and ultimately make better decisions and better communication because you're not reacting to everything. You're processing it in a more effective manner.
Okay, so I want to hit on 2 things. One is your meteoric rise in your teacher, our teacher, Tej. And the other are certain terms that we use in the Kundalini vernacular. So I think most people know about auric fields, but we have nadis and we have a 10-body system. So let's touch on a few of those things. Which direction would you rather go into first?
I really like discussing the 10 bodies with people.
Oh, yeah, let's do that.
Because I think that's very unique to the Kundalini yoga system. I have never seen anyone teach that outside of it. And especially within the 10 bodies, you have your physical body, which in this system is the 5th. And you have, I'll go through them. You have the soul body, that's essentially your soul. But the thing I find most fascinating are the 2nd, 3rd, and 4th body, and that's what we call the 3 minds. There's a negative mind, a positive mind, and a neutral mind. And when I say negative and positive, I really don't want people to hear that as good or bad. Think of it as 2 sides of a battery. There's a plus and a minus.
Exactly.
So they're both good. But what negative mind does is it protects you. It looks for the danger. If you don't have a strong negative mind, you're often very naive and you're very susceptible to bad circumstances because your intuition's not telling you what to look out for. So I say people with a weak negative mind, they're very Pollyannish. They can see the positive in things, but they can't see the danger. And so every time a human sees something, their mind immediately goes to the danger. And that's why we get so scared when someone's different from us. And that's where all these kind of superficial scares, they're from a different country, they're different ethnicity, different sexuality. People throughout history immediately go to fear because their mind naturally sees the danger. But then you go to the positive mind, which is next, which sees the opportunity. If someone doesn't have a strong positive mind and they have a strong negative mind, they're often very cynical. They can see all the problems, they can see all the obstacles, but they can't see the opportunities. And so the positive mind really allows you to focus on what can be gained from this situation. Where's that opportunity there? And that leads us to the neutral mind, which is you take the dangers and the negatives from the negative mind, and you take the opportunities and you take the positives from the positive minds and you weigh them out. And with both the negatives and the positives, you then make a neutral decision on how to act.
Yeah, and what I love about the neutral mind is that you can always tell when somebody's mastered that. I mean, not mastered it, but come close to, because they're even keeled.
Yeah.
Right? The presence of somebody who's in their neutral body is very calming.
Yeah, it's very calming. And I see, people are just being objective. And sometimes I really like talking to lawyers because they just kind of look at the facts and then they operate from there. And I always tell people a good way to work on a very pragmatic way I tell people to work on your neutral mind. The best is meditation. People want philosophy, they want self-help, but meditation with a mantra is what's going to develop that, because you get your emotions under control and it clears the subconscious. But another way I tell people is you find something very polarizing. Like I use politics. I'm apolitical. I don't care about parties. I don't care about personalities. I care about learning and what can I learn. Whether here in America, it's very divided right now politically, but I say, if we'll take two very powerhouse politicians, you have Barack Obama and you have Donald Trump. If you like one of those people a lot, right? We're in LA, so we'll say you really like Obama. I encourage you to look at what he's really strong at, but then also look at the weaknesses as well. And then you have somebody like Donald Trump who's very polarizing. And I see a lot of people who have a lot of either very Pollyannish, they can't see the weaknesses, they're his hardcore supporters, or I see his hardcore detractors who can only see the ugly qualities. Where if you're neutral, you can look at both of these men and say, okay, what can I take from both of them that's a positive? Yep. For example, with Barack Obama, I look at him, I think he's graceful. He's got a statesmanship about him. And that elegance is something that I really like about that individual, so I try to learn from it. And then I look at someone like Donald Trump, and it's like he's so resilient. No matter what he goes through, what's thrown at him, he finds a way to win. He finds a way to come out on top. So I tell people,
take the best.
Take the
Leave
best.
The rest.
So, okay, if you love or you dislike these people, take Obama's graciousness, his elegance, his statesmanship, take Trump's resilience and that powerhouse he has to create a strong following, and combine those things within yourself and look at the person you can become. Right. And then at the same time, I'm not going to go into these two individuals' negative characteristics.
Right, of course not.
But look at the negatives of both of those people and then reflect on where in my life am I behaving that way.
Yeah, look at the mirror, reflection.
Yeah, look in the mirror.
Right, that is key.
Because, oftentimes the greatest lessons aren't from the yogis or the high monks. It's from the biggest fools. And you can say, wow, that really irritates about that person, but reflect, why does that do that? And it can become very healing.
There's often something in your character which is reflected in that, and that's why it rubs you the wrong way, right? We call that the reflection.
Yeah.
So let's continue with the other bodies.
Oh, the other body. So then the fifth body is the physical body. That one's pretty self-explanatory. But one thing I can give people that's a special note on that, because we're in LA, is when you're dealing with your physical body, don't just worry about your fitness, worry about your health. Because you see a lot of people, they're working out or they're doing things with their body to impress others, where when you're working with your physical body, make it so you feel good. Your body's like your vehicle. So make it a luxury car. It's comfortable and it's beautiful for you. Be secure in it. And it also relates to everything else. So many problems in life, I think, can just be solved from hard exercise.
I agree completely, as you know.
You know, if you're angry, you can read a book, or you can go lift weights and run and do martial arts. And I'm telling you, the latter can help sometimes with the immediately really fast.
Well, that's part of what our practice teaches you. You know, you go in that room and it's hard.
Yeah.
Our workouts are hard, but they are preparing you for what's even harder, which is day-to-day life.
Yes.
There is nothing harder than the experience of life. So that 1.5 hour class that we do every day is prep for what happens once you walk out that door.
That's a beautiful way of put it. I always say it's a spiritual practice. And then the second you tune out and you leave the room, it's game time. So you go in there and you're sharpening the saw. And then the second you leave the room, it's like we're going to cut down the trees to build our house, which is our legacy and the way we impact others.
Right. What makes the practice so valuable is how we apply it to life, to our life skills. It's not a class, right? It's not a workout class. It's so much more.
Yeah, it's a practical application, and you have to walk in the practice, but in a way where you're also having compassionate towards yourself for your own shortcomings. You know, I remember I was teaching online at a studio in Venice, and I think it was like November 2020. So we had the COVID lockdowns, we had the financial crisis, we had the election. I mean, people were losing it. And I give this nice, beautiful talk on not being reactive and using these things going on as a tool to practice being calm and not reactive. I tune out. I go to leave the yoga studio. I'm pulling out of the parking lot. Someone cuts in the lane, and I'm honking and yelling in my car. And I'm like, did you not just 2 minutes ago discuss not doing this? But again, you're always a student.
You're right. We're in our human incarnation, and that's just a fact, and that's something we can't lose. But the fact that you were aware of it tells you that you're working through the process.
Yeah, and it's one mistake I see teachers, especially when they start to get a lot of notoriety or people put them on a pedestal, is not holding themselves accountable for their own shortcomings. You know, if you're dealing with someone who's your student, you don't really need to explain yourself for everything, because sometimes you're operating in a way that is aligned with their soul's needs, but not aligned with their ego's wants. And so in that relationship dynamic, you don't always need to explain your behavior, but once you go out into the world, you know, not everybody's watching you anymore. So you have to hold yourself to a high accountability and have a great integrity, because some of the most saintly behavior will give you a bad reputation, where one of my favorite terms in Dharma is idiot compassion, which I think is very prevalent in our culture now, is people are enabling. They give people the sweet poison instead of the bitter medicine. And I used to see that a lot in the mega churches where I grew up in the South, where it's like, okay, they needed revenue coming in, which is fair. We want everyone to be successful in every area of life and be wealthy. You know, Yogi Bhajan used to say poverty is a curse that must be broken, and I'm a big fan of that.
Yeah, me too.
But what I also noticed is, as a kid, I'm like, why aren't they telling these men around me, because I had a single mom, so I'm looking for role models, why aren't they telling these men to, like, stop getting drunk every weekend and to get their bodies in shape, because that's really going to stir the pot. And so sometimes being compassionate and being liked are not compatible in every situation. And the analogy I make is give the bitter medicine instead of the sweet poison, and it won't always make you the most popular teacher, but it'll make you a powerful teacher, and you'll be able to heal people that way.
Right. There's a book, and I know that this is not the title, but it's something along the lines of The Downside of Empathy. And yeah, so it's along those lines. I mean, you want to have empathy, but you also want to create drive.
Yeah, and that's the thing. I remember I was working with this young woman who's so wonderful, and she was in her early 30s, and she had never had a boyfriend. And she was pretty, she was sweet, she had so many good qualities. And I remember she kept coming to me and telling me these things, and I was being very nice, but nothing was changing. And then I had to have a really, really harsh conversation, and I was intentionally stern. And I had to explain to her, listen, like, you're dressing in a trashy manner, you're going to trashy places, you're acting trashy, and then you're wondering why you're ending up with these trashy men who aren't committing to you. And I used a little bit of a different vocabulary
I
at the time.
understand, yeah.
And she was furious at me. She couldn't believe it. And she wouldn't talk to me, and she was angry. But then a couple months later, she comes up to me and she gives me a hug and she goes, "Thank you. Like, no one would tell me that." And then immediately following that, she had her first long-term boyfriend. So I didn't tell her what she wanted to hear. I told her what she needed to hear. And it created a lot of animosity and resentment. However, she's a very intelligent girl. She was able to see past that down the line. And because of it, now she's been able to have healthy relationships with men. And more importantly, she has greater self-respect and self-reverence for herself. And that's what's attracting the men.
Yeah, oftentimes in our community, a teacher isn't just someone who stands up at the front of the class and tells you what moves to make. They're there for moral support, advice. So we use the term teacher.
Yeah.
We use it a little bit differently.
Yeah, I agree with that. And I think that's often, Yogi Bhajan said he wanted to create teachers, and that's what I want to do. But I think it's often a misconception where it's just teaching a Kundalini class from a stage. I have one student I work with, he says, "Oh, I don't want to be a teacher." And he has no idea he's one of the greatest teachers, and he's an owner and CEO of a massive business, but he's teaching through his example. And that's one of the things is whatever you do, you can be a teacher in that. You can teach through example. You can teach through mentorship. It doesn't need to be as linear as teaching a yoga class on stage.
Right. Well, even when you do teach one on stage, while a class is an hour and a half, a teacher is usually there for close to 2.5 hours because the lineup of students that want to speak to you after the class, and there's a commitment to staying. There is a commitment to the student. There's a commitment to teaching. I mean, it's really a very interesting community in that we're looking for expansion. We're looking to help. We're looking to grow. You don't see teachers grabbing their backpacks and hauling out of class. It doesn't happen. It's kind of like seva. We give seva, giving back. We give seva to our students the way they give seva to us.
Yeah, and it's important because a lot of the times healing people and teaching them is they just need someone to listen.
Yeah.
And just by holding space for that person. And I've seen that a lot with inside of Kundalini, but also outside of Kundalini yoga, where there's these great healers, whether they come in the form of counselors or massage therapists or teachers in other disciplines. But what it is they really have their scene together and they're able to hold space for somebody who's going through a lot. And it's something I often have to tell men when they're dealing in romantic relationships with women is you don't really need to offer a solution all the time. Sometimes they know the solution. They just need to be heard and they just need to process what they're going through.
Yeah. I love the idea of holding space and how invaluable it is. Okay, so have we touched on where did we leave on
Okay, so now we're on the sixth body, which is the arc line.
Oh,
so
right.
the arc line's really cool.
They start getting really interesting.
Yeah, so the arc line is interesting because it's kind of that bridge between the more, the mind and the body and the soul and to where it gets into the more metaphysical side of things. And I want to present it in a way that's very grounded. And the arc line's really wonderful because you can see it often in Christian paintings and Buddhist paintings and just about any religion. You see a halo that goes from like the shoulders, shoulder to shoulder,
ear to ear, yeah.
And everyone has that arc line, and it can cause it brings lots of opportunities. It's the power of prayer. There's so many invaluable things. We could do a whole hour on just the arc line, but the other thing that's really important is women have two arc lines, one that goes nipple to nipple. And a lot of women understand this, and it's funny, they're not used to hearing a man talk about it, but when a woman's with a man, his imprint stays in that arc line for 7 years. And we say that's why sometimes a woman will be like...
After making love. When a woman makes love to a man, right, their imprint is on their arc line.
The imprint's there. And so women will be like, why am I still thinking about my ex, but I haven't been with him with months? Because the energetic imprint's there. Or why am I thinking about the guy from Tinder 3 years ago? And it's because, and where men, it's not so much the same. Like we can be a bit promiscuous and those energetic imprints fall off, where when women do that, it can be a bit confusing and
we have to be
up.
we have to be careful with who we choose, because they're entering our arc line and there's nothing we can do about it.
Absolutely. And then the arc line's the base for the aura. And aura is a very popular word right now.
Yeah.
And so it's the seventh body and it's the eighth chakra. Typical systems talk about 7 chakras and the 8th chakra being the aura. And that's how your total personality is projected. You know, sometimes people, they come into the room and the whole room lights up.
So you'd say, would you say energetic field?
Yeah, it's your energetic
right,
field.
There you go.
And in a scientific term, if you really go into Western science, they call it the electromagnetic field.
Correct.
And that's where people really study it. But that's another important thing. Sometimes academic minds are very weary of abstract vocabulary. So when I say aura, it's woo-woo. But when I say electromagnetic field, they're like, oh, that's what you're talking about.
Which is great, because now we're finding the merging of science and spirituality.
Yes, 100%.
Which is bringing so many more people into practice.
And yeah, it creates a bridge, because what it is people understand things through different avenues.
Yeah, you hear Dr. Joe Dispenza speaking of Kundalini and Tony Robbins. They're all using this vernacular now, and it's really important, because what it does is it brings somebody who wouldn't normally be following Kundalini into the program. Like,
yes,
they're getting it.
And that's what I always try to stress with people is sometimes, especially in the spiritual world, people are very hypercritical of their peers or people who are influential, but a lot of people have different places. You know, sometimes people come into a Kundalini studio if it's their first time and it's too out there for them. Like, it's really advanced, it's really fast.
It's really esoteric.
It's very esoteric, and so that might be too much for them at that stage. Where if someone read, it's funny, someone once recommended to me one of the books from Joe Dispenza called Becoming Supernatural.
Right.
He did such a fantastic job of explaining certain concepts in a way that's more digestible.
It's palatable.
Yeah.
It's palatable for people who haven't read this or studied it. The terminology is much more digestible. So he's done an incredible service.
Yeah, it's a great job, and it's a gateway, and I feel the same way about the gentleman Andy who created Headspace. I was once watching an interview with him, and he said, look, listen, Headspace is very entry level for meditation. He goes, and you can use it your whole life, or you can move on to more advanced things. And he's had plenty of experience with the esoteric, but he knew when getting it to the West, we need to plant a lot of seeds. And then those seeds are all going to grow into different expressions. But I always encourage people, if anybody's having a positive way of bringing authentic spirituality to the masses, we should celebrate them.
Yeah, I agree, because it's introducing something new and often fascinating information that's grabbing people that would normally not even be like. I know so many people who read Joe Dispenza that would normally never have heard the word Kundalini, and now they're fascinated by it. So, look, and whether or not he's using it the same way we do, I think teachers take from each other.
Yeah.
Right? We take part of what works and what doesn't, and we see how it grows, and we see how people accept it, and we see if they're thriving or if they're not. And it's so important. To keep people growing and to keep people's mind activated and focused. And so God bless them. If you can merge science and spirituality, you're going in the right direction.
Yeah, and he did a really great job. I think he only used the word Kundalini yoga or Kundalini once in the book. And the way I remember he used it was, I don't like to use the word Kundalini because a lot of people have preconceptions of what that is, but you need to be aware that this is what we're talking about. So it was great. He had the integrity to make the reader aware of what we're talking about, but he was also presenting it in a way that got around a lot of preconceived notions of what people thought it was.
Yeah, well, look, for example, when you talk about an auric field, it sounds woo, right? But it can actually be measured.
Yeah, it can be measured with science. And it's people like him, and there's, I know at UCLA they worked with a lot of esoteric things, is we can measure it because these practices are thousands of years old, but these computers are only less than 100 years old. So sometimes it's not, the credibility is people put too much credibility in computers and modern science.
We are the computer, but people like to see it in modern computers. Right?
Yeah, and
our brain is the most fascinating computer there is. It's also the most complex.
Yeah, I mean, computers have only proved in the last 50 years that running can help you lose weight, but running's helped you lose weight for thousands of years and stay in shape. So sometimes science has to catch up.
And now that one can measure an electromagnetic field, we know that auras actually do exist, and that people do radiate at different levels and different frequencies and higher and lower. And, this is something that you want to work towards, right? We all want to have a high frequency.
Yeah, and the aura is, people always want to learn more about it, but it's really the thoughts you're projecting. So with mantra and meditation, and there's other great technologies as well. People use hypnosis, people use NLP. Whenever you can clean your subconscious and make it positive and uplifting and get rid of the negative, that's what's going to change your aura. And
it's like cleaning out old files that are holding on to old shit that no longer serves you, right? You just want to, it's like on your computer. You just want to toss those files and bring in the new, like update it.
Yeah.
Update the circuitry.
It's funny you use that analogy because I tell people all the time is there was a lot of, I said a thought can be like a record playing, and a lot of the traditional psychotherapy was they observe the record, they talk about the record player, what vinyl it's on, the artist, but the record is still playing. But with Kundalini Yoga, what you do is you take that record, you break it, and you put a better record on.
Yeah, because you don't want that groove to get deeper and deeper, right? You just don't want to, it's like, I don't know if this is fair or not, but I kind of feel like with AA, that whole, I am an alcoholic, I have to give myself over, and there's nothing I can do. That you keep saying to yourself, if you keep repeating that to yourself, guess what? It's true.
And that's
thoughts become words. And I have no problem with the program. It's just that kind of mentality that I don't necessarily like, because I think it gets you stuck.
Well, the thing is, AA, I think, was good because it's made people conscious of this is a problem that we need to get over. But what you're saying is really good because we say repetition is the mother of all learning. And repetition also is hypnosis. It also how you get things into the subconscious. In yogic terms, we say japa. It's repetition of a mantra that creates tapa, which is a psychic heat. But I'll tell you an example. It's like if I make my identity, and there's a brilliant book by a gentleman named James Clear called Atomic Habits where he goes deep into this, and I recommend it to everyone. But if I make my identity, I'm a meditator, and I'm telling everyone I'm a meditator, what action do you think I'm most likely to do? Is I'm going to meditate. If I tell everyone I'm a yogi, and I'm telling everyone I'm a yogi, I'm more likely to do what? Yoga. If I'm telling everyone I'm a martial artist, what am I most likely to do? Martial arts. Now, if I'm telling everyone I'm an alcoholic, what am I most likely to? You're most likely to relapse. And then you add shame and guilt onto it with anonymous. And so that just makes the cycle more common, where I think they should call it shameless sobrieters.
Look, you can't cut something down that works, but I think that what we're trying to say is our way is a different way.
Yeah. And
our way is a different way.
You can go into that and say, hi, I'm Gian Randev, and I'm a sobrieter. And you could say, I've been sober for 5 minutes, but you're telling yourself, I'm a sober person.
Right, we're emphasizing the positive.
Yeah, make that sobriety part of your
identity
and have no shame for having been an alcoholic or a drug addict, because it was just the lessons you needed to learn at the time.
And I also think that one should never say that they're powerless.
No, you have all the power, and we want to get away from any sort of victimhood mentality or feeling like we're not enough to do what we need to do. you just have to be you and operate from that. And I always say life's like a game of cards. Like you can't always pick what hand you're dealt, but you can play it.
Exactly.
And that's what you need to focus on is how can I play this hand?
Okay, so auric field
Goes into
goes
pranic
into
body.
pranic body.
So this is another great way we'll tie it together, is the pranic body. It has a lot to do with how much energy you have, and psychically, physically, all of it. And the way you really develop that is through a lot of pranayama. And I'm very fortunate nowadays, as we had that gentleman Wim Hof make breath work very popular, and we have the holotropic breathing crowd.
There you go. That's another example.
And it's another example of something gone really mainstream.
Mainstream and commercial, and exactly.
And one thing he does really well that's going to tie into the subtle body, which is the 9th, but we'll pause here, is with Kundalini Yoga, we have such a vast technology, and we have so many pranayams, segmented breath, long, deep breathing, breath of fire, and just tons of variation. There's hundreds of breath meditations. And the thing is that's great because we can expand with so much diversity. But what's beautiful about, say, the Transcendental Meditation crowd or Wim Hof is that Wim Hof gives you, as far as I know, one breathing technique, unless something has changed. The Transcendental Meditation crowd would give you one mantra and one meditation, and people spend their whole life going really, really deep in just one technique, which is something we want to do in Kundalini Yoga as well. But sometimes, people, they spread themselves too thin. So with the pranic body, we want to use pranayama. Martial arts is good for it. Physical exercise to get lots of energy. And that's the 8th body. And a lot of breath patterns are very useful for that as well.
Right. So, for example, when you see somebody who's really low energy, you think to yourself, God, they really need some chi.
Yeah.
It really helps with the life. It's life force. It's chi.
Yeah, chi is a good word. Chi and prana kind of go hand in hand.
I think so.
You see these things express themselves differently in cultures. For example, with Tai Chi, I used to be really frustrated with the martial arts community because they try to compare it to like Muay Thai or Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu or boxing, where Tai Chi is more about movement and moving energy. I saw it more as a form of yoga than martial arts, but where Tai Chi originated, yoga is not part of the vernacular. So they categorized it as martial arts, but it's a great way to bring energy to the body. People do it with acupuncture. But the best way I can relate that is sometimes you just see someone who looks like a zombie. Yeah. Or sometimes I see a lot in Hollywood, people are very physically beautiful, but they seem just checked out. But when people are bright, they have a beam in their eyes, and they're just full of vitality, that's someone who's got a strong pranic body. Exactly. Because they just have that energy. You mentioned Tony Robbins earlier. I think that gentleman has so much prana. You see him teach, and he's loud, and he's on his feet, and that's a man in his 60s. He's not 25, but he's just full of prana. And so when you can really develop that pranic body, that's when you just have that life force. You have vitality, and that's one of my favorite ones to work on because it's right away you notice the tangible feeling of I got a lot of prana in the system and I just have that pop of energy. And lack of prana is a multi-trillion-dollar business. We have coffee, people use it and other stimulants because they just need more energy. So
antidepressants is lack of prana, by the way, right? It's the lack of life force, and we're trying to put something else back in there, and it's not something that you can emulate with a drug. And it's also, breath work is actually difficult. It's much easier than it sounds, just sitting there and breathing. But it'll launch you into outer space, and it's also exhausting on the body.
Yeah, it can, because sometimes the nervous system has to adjust. So sometimes it's one step back before 2 steps forward. People can do a lot of breath work and be tired for the rest of the day, but it's because their body's healing and the nervous system's adjusting to hold more prana.
I think they've also done some studies which show that the heat that's generated within the body is actually burning more calories in certain exercise classes.
Yeah, and I'm a big fan of seeing athletes getting into it because you get these effects. It's really great for cardio. And it was one of my first obsessions as an athlete. And I always encourage people to get more prana through like cordyceps tea, the mushroom, rhodiola. Those are ways it gets more oxygen in the system. But it's a way for people to have great cardio where, say, running, it's really hard on the joints. It's hard on the knees and the muscles, but you can really build the lung capacity with pranayama in a way that isn't as fatiguing. So it's really great. And like you said, it can bring a lot of happiness. And with depression, again, I think there's a lot of shame around like depression and anxiety, and it's completely unnecessary. There's never been a human that's walked Earth and hasn't felt depression and anxiety.
Oh God, I feel it daily. That's why I'm such a workout lunatic.
Yeah.
It knocks it out of you, right? You start moving the chi and then boom, the depression's gone.
Yeah, and from a yogic point of view, it's just energy caught in the navel. And our navel deals with our self-esteem, so you just got to move the energy. And so what you talked about is that exercise does it for you. Martial arts do it for people because the whole system's based on the navel. And I just tell people, if you're struggling with either of those, I was once teaching we had like 120 people in the Dome and the Normafa Hotel in Budapest that I sometimes teach out of. And I said, I want to ask, has anyone in this room never felt depressed or anxious? Please raise your hand. And there wasn't a single hand in 120 people. So, you wouldn't feel ashamed of having a cold or having a cough. So you should never feel ashamed of feeling depressed or anxious. You just got to move your energy and get to a happier headspace.
Yeah, my advice is always get up and go outside.
Yeah.
That's step one.
And you don't always have to have an opinion about everything. Like if you're out of shape, you just need to work out. If you're depressed or anxious, you just need to move the energy. And it's that simple, and not really get your self-esteem involved.
It's that instantaneous. What's Yogi Bhajan's expression? If you're thinking about something, do it. And what is that expression? It's basically don't procrastinate. Be in the moment.
It says, when the pressure's on, start.
Yes.
And the pressure will be off.
Exactly.
It's one of his 5 sutras.
I love that sutra. Why I couldn't just remember it, I have no idea. But, okay, so now let's talk about the subtle body.
Okay, subtle body. So that's 9. That deals with mastery. Subtlety is nice because people who have a really strong subtlety, I would say they have a great finesse. They can do things with precision. Elegance. Yes, exactly. So where if you're lacking in the subtle body, you can be unintentionally crude, kind of sloppy. And so the subtle body, one of the ways you develop that is you pick a meditation that you do 1,000 days without a break. If you miss a day, you start on day 1. It's 1,000 consecutive days. And I did that with 31 minutes of the Kriya, Trishula Kriya. And I did that, I think, in like 3 different states,
I remember
3 different continents, 13 different countries, something like that. I did it in the hospital with an IV sticking out of my arm, but I was like, I'm going to get this 1,000 days. And I've kept going since then. I haven't missed a day. But what it is that's what we were talking about. What was so great about the lineages of transcendental meditation and Wim Hof is they had one Kriya. And traditionally, that's how it was taught. You had one Kriya, you spent your whole life mastering it, and that really develops the subtle body. But the beauty of Kundalini Yoga is if you have the discipline to master one Kriya, you get the depth of one Kriya, but you also get the breadth of having so many different practices to expand with. So you get to go deep and wide. So the subtle body is just going really deep, and if you wanted to apply it to something else, whatever you do, if you're a craftsman, just become a master with the finite details. And I appreciate that when you go, like say you go to a restaurant and the sound system's good, the chairs are good, the food's excellent, the service, everything's been consciously curated. And there's a story, I don't know the full telling of it, but the British cycling team was always terrible in the Olympics. And then one year they just exploded and won a ton of gold medals, more in one year than the entire previous 100 years. And what they did was they hired a consultant, and he just looked at everything they did, whether it was the massage oil they picked, the bicycle seats, the toothpaste they used, and they said, every little subtle detail we're going to improve by 1%. And in China, they can say, destruction can be death by 1,000 cuts, but there's a positive to that. Success can be from 1,000 minor details improving. So it's just the excellence, and you see it in modern world. You go to high fashion, and the difference between a $5,000 suit and a $500 suit are just subtle details. Or in spirituality, we say the divinity's in the details. So that's what we really want, is people to be excellent and relate to the mastery of the teachings instead of it becoming a mystery.
Yeah. So now that we've covered the bodies.
Oh, we have number 10.
Oh, yeah, sorry.
So we have number 10, which is the radiant body. And the radiant body...
I love this one.
Yeah, that's a lot of people's favorites. I think, especially in Hollywood, a lot of actors have strong radiant bodies. It's kind of your charisma, your projective shield. You walk into the room, and the room just lights up, and the impact that you have. And our teacher, Tej, literally Tej means radiance. And I think she's just such a great example of that, is when she gets on stage and she starts teaching, she's just so radiant, and the room lights up, and there's her humor and her knowledge of these teachings. And one of the things I love, it's very good for helping people with blocks in spirituality and physical materialism to get by. So one of the teachings of the radiant body is to not cut the hair, because it's the nervous system is connected to it. But the other teaching I love is people who want to work on their radiant body is wear a lot of jewelry and dress really nice, have the perfect bana. And the bana doesn't need to be the white Kundalini turban. It's whatever you wear. And I always remember I was at a party, I think it was here in Bel Air, and I walked into the party and I saw the fashion designer Tom Ford.
Mm-hmm.
And I was
was here. He was my neighbor.
Oh, really? Yeah, I was here. I go to this party and Tom Ford's in there. But there's a lot of people with stylists, and they have, huge incomes, and they can wear whatever they want. But his outfit and his radiance was just incredible. And he was just wearing a suit. I think it was a black suit. And I was just blown away by the excellence and the way it could just kind of hold space in the room.
Right. And also, it's like, we love our gems. Yeah. And Kundalini is a practice of precision.
Yes. So
we do take everything, if you're going to do something, do it right.
Yeah.
Don't cut corners.
Exactly. And that's what we want to work on. And then one thing that often doesn't get taught in the 10 bodies, because it relates to the numerology, is with number 11, because sometimes you do the numerology and you get an 11, is that relates to the sound current. So in the Sikh tradition, they have...
I want to get into this with you on a deeper level.
Yeah, the Sri Guru Granth Sahib. But in general, any working with mantra and sound, or sound therapy, is great. A properly played gong is very powerful. That's also something that 11th body, you really go into the subtlety of life as well, is relating to the sound. And as simple as... mantra music's one of it, but you can also listen to classical music, and the frequency of the sound is very different.
Right. Well, as you know, the name of this podcast is In The Naad, and Naad is the universal sound. And so I wanted to talk to you a little bit about the importance of the sound current. I mean, you're an exquisite gong player. Now you're playing too. You're up there like a rock star. But what it does to the body, and how... the body is 90%, 85% water, and the impact that sound and frequency has on the body.
Yeah, and that's a great topic to discuss, because that's one of those things where people sometimes have a hard time wrapping their head around. But when we say the whole universe is vibration and its frequency and its sound, so many people will be like, wow, that's like new woo-woo, new age philosophy.
It's Tesla and Einstein.
It's Tesla and Einstein. It's so funny. I talk to people who are physicists, and they're like, this isn't philosophy, this is physics.
Right, exactly.
I'm like, I know. The yogis just understood that the universe was sound and vibration, but sometimes people don't understand that, and it's just too out there for them. But this is physics, and people be like, oh, that's some metaphysical talk. I'm like, physics. It's like, It's the more subtlety of physics. So the whole universe is sound and vibration, And, with the gong, and if the gong player is playing properly, he chants a mantra when he plays. And I always chant the same mantra. It's the Pan Shabad, it's Sata Nama, when I play the gong, because it can help filter your psyche. Because the idea, any teacher in the world, it's not about the teacher. They're just the pipe, and you're going for the water. And when you're chanting a mantra, you're cleaning your channel. So people are getting the energy they need from the sound and not picking up anything positive or negative from you.
It has to be pure in its purest form. So you're cleaning yourself out so that you're transmitting the purest form.
Yes, and that's what we're going for. And you see it sometimes in music. Like there's this masterful jazz musician who's Victor Wooten. He's a bass guitar player. And he's also just a brilliant teacher because he came from a family of music teachers. And he talks about playing with different sound currencies when he tunes his instrument to have a more heart-centered experience where you feel it in the body. And a lot of music, it's just a beat or it's just a rhythm. I say it's very superficial sound, where we're working on developing our relationship with the universal sound. And the best way to do it is chanting a mantra and falling in love with your sound current and your voice. And loving your voice doesn't mean you need to be able to sing like Whitney Houston or talk like Morgan Freeman. Your voice, it allows you to communicate with your children. It allows you to have business deals. It allows you to have beautiful relationship with friends and family.
Yeah, one should love their voice, and they should also love the image that they see of themselves when they look in the mirror.
Yeah, and when you look at yourself, try to look at your integrity and your consciousness, because the body is going to age and it's going to fade, but it's important that you love yourself at your face value, and just if you're putting your effort into working on yourself, on being better, just be happy with where you are at that moment.
Right.
Because people see, whether they're very attractive or not, they see it as this big thing.
Try to see the radiant body, the aura, the subtle body. That's why we have so many.
And everything you have going on. And no, the physical body it's not just who you are. It's just a part of who you are in this moment. Like it becomes very, very small.
I have this crazy philosophy because I'm a big music fan. I mean, obviously mantra is a part of my belief system, but I believe that these really masterful musicians who play the guitar all the time, the Jerry Garcias, that whenever they're with their instrument, they're actually in a meditation.
Yes,
and
absolutely.
So the longevity, you look at them, they look young. I mean, the ones that aren't drug addicted, they seem to have these long lives and look younger than most people of their age. And I think it's because they're actually in that suspended animation while they're in their meditation, which for a lot of them is all the time.
And it's amazing. Yes, they tap into that meditative mind because they have a mastery of that instrument.
Yeah. And the frequency is running through them constantly.
And they're working with the sound, and it's their
telomeres aren't getting older. Like the whole body is staying youthful. Because yoga, the practice of yoga does keep you young.
Yeah, and there's different ways to express your sound. Like Keith Richards isn't a singer, but man, he expresses his sound through that instrument.
Right, and it's running through his body.
Yeah, and you feel it.
You feel the vibration.
It keeps him young, it's meditative, and it's really unique in that way. And you made a point earlier, it's kind of how the yoga works. Some people get in that flow state through an instrument and music, maybe a sport like martial arts or surfing. But what this practice does is it takes you years to be able, say with a surfer, is to be able to be in a flow state when you're surfing because you've developed a relationship with that discipline. With Kundalini Yoga, we're developing a relationship with our breath, our sound, our movement, and our stillness. And so what happens is the culmination and the synergy of all those things, you can start to be in a flow state all the time because you're either quiet, making a sound, moving, or sitting still, and hopefully you're breathing. And then when you can create that flow state, you can have it with you always. And there's this quote from Marcus Aurelius I always love, and we teach martial artists, and his book Meditations. Amazing book. Yeah. He goes, better a wrestler than a fencer, your weapons with you always. And I feel the same way with with this practice is I would know guys who'd get in such an incredible flow state in jiu-jitsu and it would keep their lives together, but then they'd get a really bad injury and they couldn't train jiu-jitsu for 3 months and they become a mess. But with your breath, your sound, your stillness, and your movement, for as long as you're going to live, you're going to have that with you. And so you can always have yourself. It's like you said, it's a sport or an instrument. It's kind of like fencing. It's still great, and I'd encourage it. But to build the relationship in the flow state, to build it into yourself is so powerful because you have it always.
So, Gian Randev, we've covered a lot here. Now, we haven't done this before yet, Haley, have we? I wanna ask you if because we've gone, I think maybe 50 minutes, but I would like to do a part 2 with you because I want to get into your meteoric rise. I want to get into the whole cult of personality and the incorrect belief system that Kundalini is a cult, which I could talk cult all day long. And I'd like to talk a little bit about our teacher Tej.
Absolutely.
So, would you be willing to do a part 2?
I would love that.
Okay, that would be great. So, why don't we say goodbye right now?
All right.
Tell people how to find you. Tell them about your classes, where you're teaching, where you're going, what you're doing, how they find you. And then we'll go to a part 2.
All right, so I travel a lot. You can find me teaching at the Babaji Studio in Beverly Hills now, as well as Babaji TV. I have a DVD on BJJ Fanatics that I released a couple years ago. That's available too for all the martial artists out there, but anyone who wants to learn the fundamentals, it's very useful as well. And I travel a lot. You can follow me. I pretty much only use Instagram at Gian Randev. If you have any questions...
Maybe you should spell that.
Oh, GIANRANDEV. And if you have any questions, you can always message me and we'll reach out. And you can also, I just spelled Gian Randev, but GianRandev@gmail.com. I answer those. Please give me a week or 2 to get back to you. But I will try my best to get back. And if I don't, send me a second one.
Thank you, darling.
All right. Thank you, Taylor.
Sat Nam.
Sat Nam.